I'm in New Jersey, and I'd like to say good morning, everyone. I know there are people here worldwide, so whether it be morning, afternoon, or evening, hello, and have a good day. Welcome, everybody. So my name is Arjit Mahal Sylvester, and on behalf of Technics Publishing and author Arjit Mahal, I welcome you to the book launch event. The book, and I'm going to hold it up, it's called Undo Diabetes, Heal Heart, Lose Weight, A Story of Trial and Transformation by Arjit Mahal. It is published by Technics Publishing of New Jersey. We have the honor of having the president of the publishing house, Mr. Steve Hoberman, present with us. So welcome, Mr. Hoberman. And the agenda for this 1 hour session is as follows. So there will be a presentation by Arjit Mahal, a video clip, a Q&A, and a wrap-up. And just some housekeeping rules for the Zoom session. Please keep your microphones on mute except when you would like to speak. And at the bottom of your screen is the chat button, and you are welcome to put your comments there during the session. And Steve and I, specifically me, will be monitoring the chat. If you have questions, you may also raise your hand if you like, as if we were in a classroom, so we can I can get your have your attention. And to show appreciation, since everyone will be on mute, you may show this way, either clap or shake both hands, whatever you prefer. So, as an introduction to Arjit Mahal, he is the author of 3 professional books and 1 biography. This new book about health has been inspired by his major health transformation. And before we start, I would just like to give one personal pitch, if I may, about his book. Now, based on the name, you may already deduce that I am his daughter. And just a little background about myself. I am also an author, but I'm a children's book author. And I'm not an adult book reader per se. In fact, the past 2 years and change, I have only read my competitors' books, if you will, which are children's rhyming books ages 3 to 6. So when I got my father's book the other day at Amazon, I thought, okay, this is going to be a challenge because I'm only used to reading children's books. And I could not put this down. I read it in 2 marathon settings. I'm not just saying this because he's my father. This is a really, really good book. It's a good read. And without further ado, let me introduce my father and the author, Arjit Mahal.
Thank you for the introduction, Apara. I appreciate that. I have my family, friends, colleagues, community members from just about around the world, different parts of the world as well. I welcome you and I thank you for your participation. We have, while I would like to acknowledge everyone present, first of all, I'm honored and I thank you. But there are a few individuals I would like to mention their names because they have played a big role in my life and they would be here as well. My uncle, Dr. M.S. Atwal, my aunt, Dr. Jasjeet Atwal, my sister, Manoranjana Nagra, my other sister from Canada, Harpreet Tillon, Dr. Lakhjit Sandhu, my brother, Dr. Sharan Mahal, my brother. I know Jyot is here from England, which I'm very happy. Mr. Ashok Agarwal, a good friend from India. Kevin Woodson, all the way from, excuse me, from Korea. I'm not sure if my editor is there, but if Sue Toth is there, I'd like to thank her as well. And the 2 very important people who played a big role in the book is Dr. Pradeep Aujla and Dr. Jitinder Aujla. I really can't see everyone, but if you're there, can you please just raise your hands so everybody can see who you are? That would be very nice. There are a whole bunch of friends. I really can't go over everybody's names. My cardiologist is supposed to be on, Dr. Harnish Chawla. I welcome him. Dr. Ramaya Vedula, she's my endocrinologist. And if I'm not sure if Mary Stein is there. She is Dr. Sinelli's nurse, and she's one of the best nurses that I know in my life. There are some brother Masons I see, I must acknowledge. That's right, worshipful Michael Holt. Worshipful brother Gene Fusitola is there. And there may be others, but I really, let me just have a quick look before I move on. My good friend, Captain Harold Paul is there. He has played a big role in my transformation because he and I have like our two people support group and we share a lot of knowledge, and he's mentioned in my book as well. Jane, my community member, she's the head of our Creekside community. Thank you, Jane. Thanks for being here. Maureen Forsman, good old friends. Phil Short from Canada, a whole bunch of people. Christine, Lindsay Hopkins. Lindsay is there. Lindsay, thank you very much. You will see the book illustrations. I'll show you a sample. She's such a great artist. She's an art teacher, but she drew all the hand, because I'm a believer of hand-drawn pictures and so on in the book. So thank you very much for being here. Let's see. Okay, so as I go along, I might acknowledge some other people as well. Okay, so now, by the way, Steve, I just want to, I think I'm in the right place now. Okay, just bear with me, folks. Technology, sometimes, you have to really make sure that I'm seeing everybody. Just bear with me. Record, hide. All right, that's fine. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes, looks great.
Okay. Undo Diabetes, Heal Heart, Lose Weight, a story of trial and transformation. I first want to read out the disclaimer, and it's very important that we do that. The book is a narrative of the author's personal experience and success in reversing his diabetes, improving his heart health, losing weight, and overall general well-being. The techniques, strategies, and suggestions expressed here are intended for awareness only. The contents of this book are not intended as medical diagnosis, solution, or treatment. The book is not a substitute for medical advice. This book is also not intended as advice on nutrition, food, supplements, etc. The data, concepts, information here are shown by the author by how he manages his health goals. The reader must consult appropriate and qualified medical practitioners, nutritionists, and experts in other relevant disciplines before using any of the ideas and opinions expressed by the author. These may not be approved by the Food Drug Administration. Many of you might be wondering, who are from different parts of the world, why I have to make such a disclaimer. One, it's the right thing to do. Secondly, just on the humor side, in America, we have, and it's a fact, 3 times more lawyers than all the lawyers of the world put together. So we have to be very careful. The book's mission is, it's a labor of love with the following mission: by reversing my diabetes and attempting to reverse my heart disease with the positive achievement of weight reduction and general well-being, I have gained knowledge and experience which I want to share with others for awareness and inspiration. So my principle has been right with your heart and right for yourself. Many times people have this perception that people write books for money only. That's not true. Yes, some people do, some entities do. On the other hand, I have published few books in the past. My commitment is that any royalty that may cut of this, first of all, I'm not likely to go and open a Swiss bank account. On the other hand, even if I do, I give it to charity for animals, nature, and human beings, and so on. The scope of the book is limited to 3 areas, basically. One is the diabetes type 2 and type 1.5. Many of the people may not have heard of type 1.5, which we will talk about later on. It's called LADA, L-A-D-A, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. And then in the heart disease, there are many types of heart disease. My focus has been on atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, and weight management. By the way, weight management is an automatic outcome of all what you do, all what I have done. The chapters in the book are Know Thyself, who am I? Self-advocacy, digestive system, very briefly, diabetes, the heart, because I have a double whammy, diabetes and heart. and those who have read about it know about it. These are partners in crime. Where there's one, is likely the other may happen. Weight, nutrition, fasting, very big aspect of fasting. And I talk about tools and I conclude. So let's talk about the know thyself. What do I have and why I have this term called know thyself? Know thyself. We all know that we have five senses, and with the five senses, all the time, day and night, we have these thoughts emerging. We smell something, we see something, the thoughts come and go. Those thoughts that come and go, they end up sitting in memory somewhere. And what is mind? The mind actually looks at the past memory and reflects upon it. For example, if I like ice cream, I see ice cream, and especially vanilla flavor, and I say, gee, that's a very nice, tasty. I start to taste the vanilla in my mouth or tongue, because the mind is drawing that information that's resident in the memory through the five senses and thoughts. Now, in terms of who am I, each one of us, we know, no matter which religious tradition we come from, there is cosmic consciousness, a supernature. We Masons call it the grand architect. Any tradition may call it anything, but there is cosmic consciousness beyond us, and we are part of it. And that is part of us that resides in ourselves. So we need to be always aware of that our mind, the mind is the one that drives our actions. So how we think, how we act is the mind that drives it, but mind is also very fickle. It can take us in the wrong direction. So we have to watch the mind moment by moment. And it's like people who do meditation, they know that meditation is not something you do for half an hour, 1 hour, and say, I'm done for next 23 hours. Meditation is a concept. You have to moment by moment be aware of the awareness which is connected to the cosmic consciousness. Likewise, mind has to be watched moment by moment. So one of the things in know thyself is very important. Know yourself, who you are. I wouldn't even suggest put a little sticky note, yellow sticky note, and say, who am I? And put it in the mirror of your bathroom. So every time in the morning when you get up, you look at the mirror and it says, who am I? Try to understand yourself. Guru Nanak, who was a great sage, a philosopher, sage, spiritual head from India, he had said, Man jite jagjeet. To win over one's mind is to win the world. The chapter on self-advocacy is about the medical consumer spider web, what I call as a spider web. Before I talk about anything, I want to mention that all the entities, the pharma, the medical, the insurances, and so on, the individuals who work there are noble people, well-meaning people. But we are sometimes caught in the system of these things. So we find ourselves that on one hand, pharma is trying to sell us something. We have scientists for sale. Who pays the money? They write articles. Talk about fake news. It's not just the fake news of the politics. It's the health media fake news I'm talking about. Food industry, the fooling of our five senses. They have artificial intelligence and so on, trying to fool our mind and thinking so that they can lure us to those products, which essentially may not be really healthy for us. And of course, there are many other entities we have to worry about, insurance and all. Now, there are two aspects to the consumer spider web. One is that we are kind of caught up in this spider web with all these entities. The second aspect is that we need to, by self-advocacy of ourselves, who we are, we should not get caught in that, but leverage it to the best we can. So it's two sides of the coin that I'm talking about. Now, I wonder if there is Steve, I just want to ask you if, how do I see anyway, if Denise Castile is there, can you please raise your hand so everybody can see who you are? Denise Castile wrote a book, very nice book. It's called I Don't Want to Die Like This. A Survivor's Guide to Thriving After Heart Attack. Now, Denise Castile had a heart problem, which was not diagnosed very well. And especially, it is also a perception, or maybe it's true, I don't know, I don't want to get into that area. But men get more attention because they seem to have heart disease and women don't. In any case, I don't want to go in that area, but her book is about self-advocacy. Take charge of your health yourself. And she survived and thrived. One of the aspects she talks about in her book, which I like very much, her mother, Miss Shirley. If Miss Shirley is there, if she can kindly raise her hand. Miss Shirley always taught her daughter Denise, take the cup by the handle, take the cup by the handle. That meant take charge of things yourself, don't depend on anyone. And in her book, she talks about trial or triumph. Set your trajectory yourself. Thank you, Denise. Now, as you know, the quotations tend to become, sometimes we quote people who are there thousands of years. So I thought I might create a quotation for myself. Who knows, 500 years from now, somebody might say, oh, let me quote something from Arjit Mahal. I am the primary physician of my body, my true healer. I am the first one. My medical practitioners, which I go to for help, come second. I am number one. I need to watch myself, what my body is, and be the self-advocate of my health. Human digestive system I have in the book just as a context, which all of us are pretty much familiar. But because we talk about diabetes, I wanted to make sure the liver, the pancreas, the stomach, these things were just highlighted. But more importantly, I want to talk about the blood glucose homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is a medical term, which means that our body, which is a factory of chemicals and neurons and cells and all kinds of elements and so on, but the body has a way of healing, keeping everything in harmony. It's called homeostasis. And for people who want to watch their weight, they want to watch diabetes, heart, because as I said before, diabetes and heart, they're all related, including hypertension. We need to be aware how the glucose works in our body. So when we eat, our pancreas produces insulin. The body cells take up the insulin and they produce energy in the whole rest of the body. The extra glucose goes into the liver and becomes what is called glycogen. And then after a while, when the body has consumed the glucose for energy, the blood glucose level declines to what is called the set point. And then this cycle just continues to go on with the high and the low. But when the blood glucose is low, in other words, the stimulus for insulin is not there, it is low. At that time, the alpha cells in the pancreas, they tell a thing called glucagon in the blood. They tell glucagon to go to the liver and tell the liver the fat that's stored there, convert it into glucose because I need it for energy. So the blood glucose level rises. And as it rises, guess what? The cycle starts again. This cycle, second by second, minute by minute, stays in our body. It's very important to understand. Sometimes we don't. We just keep on eating and don't realize. Now, when we are young, it's fine. But somebody at my age, 73, we need to be careful. What we eat, why we eat, what's happening inside. This slide here is not in the book, but I want to share with you because as I was doing the research, I realized that we are not really 100% humans. I did not know that. We are actually 50% bacteria. And we are what is called, we are not humans, we are actually holobiont. It's an assemblage of a host and the many other species living in or around it, which together form a discrete ecological unit. We have 37 trillion bacteria in the gut, and 10,000 mutations take place all the time. It's a time in which we will redefine what it means to be human, for this is not just the start of a revolution, it is the start of an evolution, okay? So the reason I wanted you to be aware of this is that what we eat in terms of nutrition, we think we are eating. Guess what? It's the trillions of microbiome that's sitting in there. We are trying to satisfy them. They're the ones we need to satisfy. For example, by experiment, I have found if I eat fermented food, they like it. The microbes inside love it. So we need to be aware that we are only 50% and we have billions and trillions of microbiome. So this is a whole new science that's emerging now, which we need to be aware of. Let's move on to diabetes. It's commonly said that diabetes is a progressive disease. It sure is, because once you have diabetes, it can continue to be there. It's not really so much, it is said it's not possible to reverse it and so on. Now, having said that, the progression of the disease is when the blood sugar rises, it's not under control. Then what happens is your weight goes up. When the weight goes up, guess what happens? You go to the doctor, and what's the gold standard? Everybody knows. Oh, take 500 milligrams of metformin. After about a year or so, okay, let's increase that to 1,000 milligrams of metformin. Then subsequently, some other medications are added, and eventually one day you go into the endocrinologist's office, and the doctor says, you know something, you're better off being on insulin. So now you start on a small insulin, then you go on to 2 days, 2 times a day, 3 times, 4 times a day, increase the doses. This goes on. And if you don't do that, guess what? The complications start to take place. You have eye disease, kidney, because the blood flows throughout the body. So all aspects of your body are at risk. However, what I want to share with you, it is reversible. Now, I have been told, I was looking for the definition of reversing the heart disease. Yeah, here it is. Sometimes when you say reversing, because the American Diabetes Association says when you are, let's say, managing better, it's called the diet managed diabetes. They don't like to call the reversal because they will say you can't, many people will say you cannot reverse. Let me just give you a quick definition of reversal. It is from Merriam-Webster: movement in reverse, to undo or negate the effect of, opposite or contrary to a previous or normal condition, to turn or move in the opposite direction, and act or the process of reversing. This is my definition of reversing diabetes. And I want to I have been able to demonstrate to myself as I reversed it through diet and fasting and lifestyle changes, which I'll talk about. My medications dropped. I used to take insulin 4 times a day. Now I take ad hoc once, a very lower dose. I have absolutely, for years, I took blood pressure medication. Now I take 0. My weight dropped from 35 to 40 pounds. And my blood sugar, most of the time, is always under control. Occasionally, but again, it has to be watched all the time. But I'm in good place where I am. Now I want to thank Dr. Neil Barnard. I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Neil Barnard because his book about reversing diabetes with plant-based food made all the difference when I started earlier on. Before I knew about the next step, which was about heart, I had to deal with the double whammy, the diabetes and the heart. So very quickly, I want you to be aware of the pancreas. It's a very complex organ, and I'm not qualified to tell you all about it, but there are areas that you need to be aware of. There are beta cells and alpha cells. The beta cells produce insulin and peptides. Insulin, as you know, goes with the bloodstream and so on. Insulin has a very short shelf life, whereas the peptides have longer shelf life. That's why when you say, I go for my A1C test, the 3-monthly test, that's because the peptides stay in the bloodstream for about 3 months. And by measuring them, one can tell how the insulin is performing and so on. So that's very important to know. Secondly, the glucagon, alpha cells produce glucagon. It's like a seesaw, the children play seesaw. When insulin goes down, that means, let's say you are not eating or fasting, the insulin goes down, the glucagon goes up. Why? Because the glucagon goes into the liver and tells, hey, you know, the glycogen that you have stored all the fat and everything in the body, it's time to release some because I need some energy. That's what happens. So when glucose starts to come out and so on, then the glucagon goes down, and then when you eat, insulin goes up. So it's important to know the seesaw that goes on all the time. Now, let me talk about insulin resistance for a moment. I'm sure you all have heard insulin resistance. What does that mean? It means that in a non-diabetic person, you have bloodstream, insulin, you eat, insulin goes into the bloodstream, and it goes into the trillions of cells. There is the receptors, they open up, glucose burns as energy, and the energy goes to your body, to the muscles, and so on. In type 2 diabetics, the bloodstream and glucose go in, the receptors don't open because there is cellular junk sitting inside the cell. It doesn't let the receptors to open and have the the glucose go in there. So guess what happens? Insulin and sugar build up behind. It's just like going to the New York City and you have a tunnel there, Lincoln Tunnel. If the Lincoln Tunnel is stopped for some reason, guess what happens? Miles of backup happens in the traffic. And what does the backup do? Higher insulin levels in the bloodstream cause type 2 diabetes and obesity. It's very important to know. I won't get into the mechanisms of this. You need to really study on that, but that's really what's happening. Now, I had mentioned that I have double whammy, not only type 2, but also 1.5. What is 1.5? 1.5 means that my pancreas is producing insulin, but my antibodies, insulin, autoantibodies think that it's an enemy, and in the friendly fire, they come and neutralize it. So therefore, that insulin my pancreas produces gets killed. So guess what? I have insulin deficiency. So therefore, on one hand, I have insulin that's over insulin. I have to manage the type 2. And then on 1.5, I have to manage this. So one of the things, a takeaway that I'd like you to take away is that 15 to 20% of the type 2 diabetics are misdiagnosed as type 2. In fact, they're 1.5. And it's important to know because the impact of that is all about discipline of what medications you should take and so on. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about liver, glucose, and glycogen. I've talked about that before, but when we eat, the stored glucose is the liver stores as glycogen, but it has limited space. Remember, liver has limited space. So the extra, like let's say when we eat extra couple of pies of slices of pizza pie, guess what happens? They go there in a process called de novo lipogenesis, and the extra carbohydrates become fat, right? And then after a few hours, let's say when you don't eat, the blood sugar and insulin start to drop. And that sends a message to the body, to the liver, and say, hey, start producing, I need some sugar. So the liver starts to convert glycogen into sugar. And of course, the sugar goes into the body. But be aware that this extra fat goes and becomes as like a visceral fat. In other words, the fat that goes around the organs and in your body. So this is the cycle. It's very important for people to understand that insulin, the guy who helps, excess of that actually can also hurt you. One man's food is another man's poison. I'm sure we have heard, but something very important I learned through my transformation. The dose makes the poison. Paracelsus in the 15th century said that anything can be harmful in excessive amounts, even if it is typically considered beneficial. So when I realized, when I started, I was 2 years ago, when I started on the regimen of insulin, my weight, every month, my weight used to go up by 1 pound. I didn't understand why, because I was eating food. Oh, gee, let me take another slice of pizza pie. Guess what? I had to take extra insulin. And what did the extra insulin did? You know the system. The liver said, I don't have space. Let me throw on his body fat or wherever. So this cycle continues to go on. That's when I realized this statement, that even though I need insulin, but insulin is also poison for me. I have another double whammy. So it's very important to understand the role insulin hormone plays in our body. Now I'm going to switch to the chapter of heart, because for the sake of time, I would like to just keep on moving. In the heart, I had a bypass surgery done in 1996. So it's 25 years, thanks to my surgeons, thanks to Robert Wood Medical Center, where my heart surgery was done, and thanks to all my physicians and so on, doctors, cardiologists, who helped me come along for 25 years. Over the years, there were some stents, few stents had to be planted, but a year and a half ago, there was a stent which was blocked again, so it had to be restented, and it's called stenosis, where my good cardiologist, Dr. Harnish Chawla, my cardiologist, Dr. Novak, I was under his care for many years, but when I moved to this area, I discovered Dr. Harnish Chawla. He stented it, and that's when he said to me, he says, Arjit, I'm going to send you to a 9-week program of the Ornish LiveScience medicine. You are going to go there, and I will tell you this, thanks to Dr. Chawla, that was the best prescription anybody wrote for me, because my local hospital, Hunterton, has a program of Ornish LiveScience medicine. It was a game changer for me, because they have 4 aspects. One is nutrition. What do you eat? How much you should eat? What kind of things you should eat? And basically it's all plant-based food. So much so that if there's anything animal in any product, don't touch it. And that was life-changing experience for me to even learn about nutrition. And also I want to share, anyway, so I'll come back to the stress management. How do you manage stress? Fitness, how much you should move. And they teach you certain things, which are, you can say, there are some yoga things in there about breathing exercises. There are some Tai Chi stuff, and there's some other exercises and so on. And the 4th aspect is the support, love and support, meaning friends, family, and so on. So this is what I learned, and my immense gratitude to Dr. Dean Ornish, who has 40 years, he's been working on reversing heart disease. And I believe one of the participants today, maybe David Signor, he's the Ornish clinical manager of Share Care. So I can't see him here, but please raise your hand. And I want to thank Share Care and the Ornish program. My immense gratitude. Again, this was a game changer. There's one tool I want to share with you that I learned through the Ornish LiveScience under deep, what I call is deep relaxation. They call it by a different name. One of the tools, the many tools, they became part of my life. It is like lying down in this position. And what happens is I do that once a day. In this position, they call it the double waterfall. So your heart has to work less because the blood starts to flow back easily. The blood accumulates in the stomach, also by the throat where your thyroids are. So it heals this area, heals this area. And I put some light music on, and I promise you, within 3 to 4 minutes, you fall asleep. But it is not the kind of sleep like you sleep on a bed. You are aware that you are sleeping. It's an amazing deep relaxation. And thanks again to the Ornish LiveScience where I learned this. Now, one thing I want to talk about, I want to also commend Hunterton Rehab on this LiveScience program, because I'm going to tell you very briefly, I call it the dream team. There are cardiologists who are directors, registered nurses, exercise physiologists, registered dietitians, nutrition, stress management specialists, executive chef. All these people are trained by the Ornish organization, and they are the ones who teach you a 9-week program on all the 4 aspects. I call it the dream team. So it's very important that to know that there is help available, provided we go and get it. And my brothers who are cardiologists, I would recommend them to look into this for their patients. On the weight chapter, I'm not going to go too much into it, but weight is an outcome. It's an outcome of the plant-based food, managing the LiveScience through Ornish program. This statement is very important. We do not get fat because we overeat. We overeat because we get fat. Now, when I started on the program, before the program, I was not obese, but I was like about 29.9, right in the middle here. I was going towards obesity. Now, with this program, I'm back to about right in the middle, 24.3 right here. And I don't want to really go too low. I just want to stay around somewhere around here. And that's what I have achieved. Very briefly, this is the nutrition part, where it's kind of an interesting joke here. Turkey, I used to love turkey, but I think the dal will do. Those who don't know dal are the lentils. Anyway, this is my favorite food now for lunch. Buddha, I call it the Buddha bowl. Buddha bowl is all the vegetarian food. I never knew the tomatoes and the carrots and all these things and the pickle that tasted so well, because all my life we have been just eating without thinking that, let's eat salad. Never thought about that. But now if this is my meal and I eat that, I thoroughly enjoy. I look forward to it. Very quickly, I want to mention that this is the media fooling the five senses. This is the latest news out there. You have $1 billion industry making plant-based burgers and the things, and they talk about they will have artificial intelligence. By 2030, the industry will be 143 billion. Very recently, just last week, the news came out. Guess what? There's a company now. You can have now fish-free fillet and crab-free cake. These are all made of plant-based. What I don't understand, they're trying to fool our next generation of children. This is what they're going to see. And that's what they're going to eat. Why not just eat plant-based food that grows above the earth and below the earth? Why do you have to process it and put all kinds of things, chemicals in there to be able to do that? Because the food industry is after your five senses. Just remember that. By the way, I just want to mention, I'm not against the food industry. Okay, they do a lot of good things as well, but we need to understand what we're eating. Now I'm going to talk about in my chapter of fasting. Fasting is this is just this is an example of a cell. Within the cell, there are hundreds of things going on, very, very complex. One of the things is called lysosome. So fasting, what happens? This is the slide that's very important in fasting. Dr. Jason Fung, thank you, doctor. He changed my thinking on also. So there were three things that made the difference to me. The plant-based food, the Dean Ornish LiveScience of all four aspects, and the fasting, which I learned from Dr. Jason Fung. And there's a scientist, Japanese scientist who got Nobel Prize in what is called autophagy. This word is not autophagy. I saw the other day that they were on YouTube. There's a one medical person talking about the autophagy. It's autophagy because it's a Greek word. Phagy means eating. And the concept is that these are the cells. There are two things happens in the cell. One is called apoptosis. That means that the program, the cell, billions, 50 to 70 billions cells every day die. They're programmed to die so the new cells can be born. But then there are other cells, which is called autophagy, and that's called self-eating. That means replacing, like if you have an old car, you replace the parts to make it function new. And that's what autophagy is. This term of autophagy, I want to thank my friend, Dr. Captain Paul, who's joining us today. He's the first one who mentioned to me, and when I explored, my windows of mind opened up. Now, what happens very high level? What happens is when you fast, all these dead cells, remember the guk inside, they all go through a process called lysosomes, and all the dead cells, they get rid of the body. So this is what autophagy is all about. Very quickly, what is autophagy? How does the process work? When we eat, insulin goes up, glucagon goes down. When we don't eat, guess what happens? Insulin goes down and glucagon goes up, and the autophagy starts the process. It clears out the old cells, the junk out of the cells, and also grows new cells and hormones and so on. And when we stop eating, immediately the process of autophagy shuts off. So it's very important to know when you're fasting, whether it's 6 hour, 8 hour, 10 hour, 18 hour, whatever it is, just remember what's going on inside the body. The moment you start eating, the autophagy shuts off. Some have thousands of reasons why they cannot do what they want, when all they need is one reason why they can. I had the reason, and people don't have the reason, they may not do it. Now I have a chapter on tools. I want to briefly talk about the tools. There are many, many, many tools to manage your sugar, A1C or not. Now, many of you know about A1C, and people say, I manage my A1C. Well, it's a very good news because that's a gold standard. But I will tell you one news more. That's just one aspect of the measurement, because the new measure, the new metric that's now gaining in the medical industry, a very big thing is called TIR, time in range. What that means is the blood glucose should be no lower than 70, no lower than 180. So it should stay within this range. So time in range is a complementary metric to the A1C. So those who are happy A1C, please go one step further and start looking into time in range, because they complement each other and you will be better that much off. So now there are all kinds of reports in the CGM. I'm going to mention about CGM monitors. So what is CGM? CGM. Here is CGM. That's a CGM. I have a little patch here. It stays for 14 days. And here it is, 182 right now, slightly higher because it's after I should really bring it down 182. This is the monitor. This was a game changer for me. It's called the continuous glucose monitoring. And the technology is advancing so fast that now in Europe, they have, you can go and plant a chip inside in a doctor's office and it stays for 180 days. Now they're going to work on 365 days. I change this every 14 days, used to be 10 days. So there are, this is called the continuous. This is your friend, folks. If those who are, by the way, many people say I'm pre-diabetics. There's a school of thought. There's no such thing as pre-diabetic. When you say you're pre-diabetic, you are a diabetic. Okay, so be aware of this understanding, and that goes back to know thyself. Now, so this is among the tools. I think we have Patty. Patty, please show everybody who you are. Just raise your hand. I just want to mention another tool that I have. It's called Aspirin Pod. I have it in the book. What happens is this great lady, she created a little tool. It looks like a heart. It's a keychain ring. And I put it by keychain, and I keep 2 pills of 325 milligram aspirin. Why? Because you never know when you may feel something in the heart. You can chew on that. It's like an insurance policy. At least it'll give you some time before you can get to the hospital. And it did happen with me. Thank you, Patty. It did happen with me a year and a half ago. Middle of the night, I started to feel bad. And that's when I took this out, chewed the 2 pills, 325 milligram aspirin, and I felt better and I went to the hospital. But again, a disclaimer, remember how many lawyers we have here? Disclaimer, check with your doctor whether you should have aspirin or not. But this is another tool I talk about. Now there's a new thing coming up out there in the industry about, it's called the synthetic hinge, University of Indiana, where they're converting a molecule in the body, which will automatically know when to adjust your sugar. So anyway, the whole bunch of reports and so on. Now, before and after, guys, do you see any difference in me? There's on the left. That's what I look like. And this is what I look like now. And I have been able to sustain and maintain that way. But it's not easy, guys. It's a solo journey and it's a tough one. But this is why in my book, I talk about 3 principles. It needs courage. It needs courage to do it. It needs courage. It needs commitment, and it needs compliance to follow through. I mean, how many people can say, I love potato chips. Here's a potato chip. I love potato chips. I eat one only and walk away. Let me show you something. Biscotti, afternoon tea. See this little biscotti? Actually, this is half biscotti. I love one biscotti with tea. But I notice if I eat the whole one, my sugar goes up. But if I eat half, I'm okay. Guess what? I eat half. Now, it goes back to my original chapter about the mind. Most of all this, the courage, the commitment and compliance, and not because our stomach wants it, it's because our mind wants it. I won't get into, but Dr. Sinelli, my doctor, said this book should be in the hands of all medical students and in medical schools available. Dr. Francis Sinelli, thank you. He read my book, and I want to tell you something. A man, such a great doctor, he's in his 90s. He read my manuscript with a gadget on his eyes because he can't see with his eyes, and he read through. Great man. Thank you, doctor. Now, I would like to mention Dr. Atul Gawande. He's from Massachusetts. It's now how good you are now. It's how good you are going to be that matters. That's what we need to think about. Now, those who have no need to change, they may just discard all this and say, hey, I'm fine. I don't need to do that. But others will. So with that in mind, I just want to tell you in the book, I have Lindsay Hopkins, I mentioned the young lady who's a great artist. She drew these concepts for me. And in the book, there are many, many more, and I want to thank you. There are stories like we have Mullah Nasruddin. Mullah Nasruddin, Sheikh Sadi, the great Sufi of Iran, Persia. And then I have the Buddha ball. And here is the egg dilemma. This is something I can't get into right now, but I just want to mention there's a big dilemma with the egg. To eat egg or not to eat egg. I have a story about the dilemma because the egg is good for my diabetes, but it's bad for my heart. So every day I have to decide, do I want to heal my heart or do I want to heal my diabetes? Not easy. One of these days, so there are two sides to this coin, but keep that in mind. This is a challenge we do go through every day. Before I wrap up, I want to mention the greatest of the Urdu and Persian poets of India of the 19th century, Asadullah Khan Ghalib, or known as Mirza Ghalib, said, Rao mein hai rakshe umar, kahan dekhiye thame, na haath baag par hai, na paon hai rakab mein. Age travels at galloping pace. Who knows where it will stop? We do not have the reins in our hands, nor our feet in the stirrups. But we can do the best we can with what we have till it lasts. Now at this time, I want to wrap up my last slide. My wife is watching in the other room. She does not know about this. We are married 50 years. Last month was our 50th anniversary. I've been writing this book for 10 years. She did not know, and she's looking at it right now as we are speaking in the other room, is dedicated to her. This book is dedicated to my loving wife, partner, friend, and well-wisher of half a century. I'm grateful for her dedication to my lifestyle, my career, and to the life challenges and triumphs she has willingly shared with me, for her support in my health and wellness. This book is an expression of my immense gratitude. In Millie's name, I give this to humanity. Thank you, Millie. I love you. My name is Arjit Mahal. I live in Flemington, New Jersey. I'm a retired business management consultant. I'm also an author of books. I'm also an historian, and I'm a Freemason. And in the Grand Lodge of Masons in New Jersey, I'm Grand Chaplain this year. So that's a bit of a background, but I go by the name of Artie, so that's fine as well. Well, I had a heart bypass surgery some 22 years ago. And I've been doing very well since then, except along the way, there were a couple of times I had to have stenting done, stents put in. But most recently, let's say going this year and the previous year and a couple of years before, there's a certain part in my heart where I have stenosis, where there was a stent. There are a couple of stents, which 3 times have been blocked again. And that's was very disappointing to me because, you have stents and you feel that it's going to last 8 or 10 years, but it didn't for whatever reason. So my cardiologist, Dr. Chawla, he recommended that I go to this program. So of course, first of all, when I looked at the program about Dean Ornish, I went on the website. It was about vegan or let's say vegetarian food and so on. I was mostly vegetarian anyway. I did not eat meat much. So I was double-minded. But I then believed that after looking at reading more of the descriptions, I found that they have a program which is an integration of 4 parts. And I like methodologies, I like frameworks. So I looked at that as a framework. For example, they have the nutrition, fitness, and third was all about stress management. And fourth is about support, friends and family. So to me, these 4 elements are the ones that they were going to teach on a 9-week program. And I thought that would be good, so I signed up for it. And I'm glad I did. The experience has been super. And I believe that The biggest difference that the program makes are the people, the staff, medical staff who's conducting this program in the cardiac rehab and pulmonary area. Each one of the staff members, they were so caring and compassionate every step of the way. So for example, if we are exercising, they're monitoring us. We had the session where we could talk about our feelings, our views, how we are doing. Then of course the nutrition part of it, the nutrition manager, she would introduce the foods to us. I became quite aware of reading labels. Life has become very different for me now because I never cared about the labels. But now I'm aware that I should not be having a certain foods or certain fat in the foods. And believe it or not, I enjoy going to the shopping, supermarkets now because I read the labels, and I enjoy that because I have been educated. So it was about awareness, a lot of awareness about all these 4 aspects. Biggest thing that happened in this program is that in 9 weeks, it becomes a habit. And they told us up front that it will become a habit. And it has. Every day now, I spend roughly about 1.5 hours daily on that stress management aspect, which has the 4 parts. Another thing I like to say where it made a very big difference to me, I'm married for 49 years. My wife cooked always the meals. I had no idea about cooking other than making a cup of tea, and that's about it. But because this program calls for certain types of food you should eat and should not eat, it was a bit of a challenge because with the spouse, because now you're changing how things are done in the household for eating. So I said, something, I'm going to start learning on my own, how to cook certain things. And I have started to enjoy cooking. I would recommend this program absolutely to people who may have heart condition, heart issues and whatnot, even for preventive measures. Now I know that my situation, I'm here because it's about reversing the heart disease because I already have the heart disease. But I believe that this could also prevent, if you're eating right and we have the nutrition and all the 4 elements that we talked about collectively can actually prevent as well. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you that that diet can prevent heart problem. And I'm not saying that this program actually does not highlight about diabetes, but it has made the difference. So I believe that I would recommend to all the people, because as we all know, heart and diabetes, they're partners in crime. Where there's one, there will be the other. So therefore, this program helps, in my case, has helped both sides. So I believe that people who are even predisposed to, let's say, heart disease or predisposed to diabetes and so on, this would be a great program for them.